The wealth gap is very much due to first, know your nature. Everyone has a different nature, a pull. What's their pull toward? I created a personality profile test called Principles U. I put it online for free, and it tells you a lot about what your nature is, and it also shows if you take the test and you put somebody else's in, they take the test, it'll tell you about your relationship. So you want to know what your nature is, what your pull is going for, and then you go through your journey of learning experiences that has its ups and downs, and you learn, you have your your painful experiences, but I have a principle: pain plus reflection equals progress. You learn, you get that, and then to have perspective, to understand that all of these things, events transpire. Know the whole cycle, see the whole thing, gain perspective, and understand where you are in the cycle. Understand where you are in the life cycle. There's a life cycle, from birth to death. And let's say on average, it lasts about 80 years. And you know that at different parts in that cycle, certain things are going to happen. You're going to, first third of it, you're going to be dependent on others and you're learning. Second third of it, you're going to be independent of your parents and so on. And others will become dependent on you, and you're working to be successful. At the various ages, you get married, you have kids, all of these cycles. There's a life cycle that happens over and over again. And then there are these other cycles, these cycles of, let's call it almost from war to war, whether that's a internal war to changes the internal order, or an external war that changes the external order. And there's a cycle that has to do with a debt cycle and those others. And you have to know what those cycles are like and kind of where you are in those cycles, and you navigate it well. I mean, the main thing, is being strong, smart, capable, and adaptable. But that's why I put out these videos and books to try to help people understand that. There's a lot of particularly unproductive people, for example, for various reasons. But I live in the state of Connecticut, and my wife tries to help students in the poorest neighborhoods that have the worst conditions. And I'll give you this example. The state of Connecticut is usually number 1, 2, or 3 in the richest state in the country. But 22% out of the last survey, it's actually higher than this, 22% of the high school students in Connecticut have either dropped out of high school or have absentee rates of greater than 25% and are in failing classes. And there's a great deal of poverty and the breakup of the families and the guidance. There's a cycle that takes place. And so you're seeing the general competitive education levels, the conditions in Connecticut. So we operate philanthropically, and I'll give you an example. There was COVID, and the kids have to get educated. And 60,000 kids didn't have computers or connectivity. And no government was going to do anything about it. So, we had to buy 60,000 computers to give it to kids in order for them to have education. Well, and there's hunger, and there's poverty, and there's drugs. It's how the educational system is funded. Education is a state issue by the Constitution. And then within a state, it's a tax, typically within a state, it's a tax district issue. So I live in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is relatively It's a rich town, and the public education gets about $24,000 per student. Last number I looked, it's probably higher than that now. Gets $24,000 a student up the road at Bridgeport, Connecticut, 10 minutes up the road. They get $14,000 a student because there's no tax base, and they need it more. They need more money because the expenses of raising a kid are you also have to get them the computer. You've got to get them the food, the clothes, all of those things, and they have less food, less clothes, all those things. So but in any case, what you can see is the education test scores and measures of how we're doing in education relative to other countries have declined. So part of it is education and circumstances. Part of it is drugs. Part of it is, there are lots of parts of it. And then there's a certain element of it, which, let's say, because of COVID or other reasons, that people have moved around and say, I don't have to work as hard anymore. So, just for example, the change in the attitudes of restaurant workers, okay, I found another way to live and so on. And that's playing a role. Of course, also people, as the baby boomers are older, they drop out of it or they want to retire earlier, and they do. So there are a number of factors that affect, this kind of set of circumstances. The wealth gap is very much due to a self-reinforcing cycle in which if you earn a lot of money, you can afford to take care of your kids' education. You can raise them in a better way. If you don't earn a lot of money, you don't have that privilege. So, so all through history, during those such times, wealth gaps have increased.